Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you today from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I am absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to introduce you to virtual kettlebell coach, Guinness World Record holder, author, and entrepreneur Colleen Conlon, who will be speaking to us from Gold Canyon, Arizona. Colleen is a true role model for grief to healing to rebirth. An eating disorder survivor, she owes much of what has helped her overcome adversity in her life to learning the hardstyle kettlebell technique, and it is now her mission to support other women in overcoming their own challenges and feeling strong and fierce through this same discipline. Colleen specializes in helping women build strength and ignite their spark to find their fierce, and she does all of this through kettlebells. Colleen's background is in yoga, indoor cycling, and three-dimensional functional strength training. She has been a fitness professional in New York City at top gyms in roles such as personal trainer, group fitness instructor, and project manager. And her fitness advice has been featured in the New York Post, Women's Health, Cosmopolitan, plus she's been a featured trainer in virtual platforms. When the pandemic hit back in 2020, Colleen pivoted her whole business online. In her first year as a virtual kettlebell coach, she taught over 100 students to safely use kettlebells. Then, in 2021, Colleen set the Guinness World Record for heaviest weight lifted in 1 hour, and later that same year, she beat her own record. Is this girl amazing or what, everybody? I'm looking forward to talking with Colleen about how she overcame an eating disorder by prioritizing being strong over being skinny, setting then beating her own Guinness World Record, helping women to find your fierce. Her book titled Kettleball Catalyst, the exercise guide for women to build strength, lean muscle, and self-confidence to overcome limiting beliefs and more, for what is surely going to be an inspiring and literally moving interview. Hi, Colleen, you're speaking my language. Welcome to Grief and Rebirth.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to spend this time speaking to you and being a person that anybody can connect to who feels connected by my story.
Oh, and your story is amazing. So let's go right for it. Tell us about your childhood, explain what led to your eating disorder, and share how you overcame it, which is not easy, I know.
Absolutely. So let's dive in. I grew up in a very conservative Catholic household, and that will come up throughout different parts of this story. When I was growing up, I was a super happy-go-lucky kid. My family moved 13 times before I went away to college. And when I was in the third grade, my one teacher called me out because she thought I was a witch, like abracadabra. I was taken in to see the school psychologist.
Wait, were you in a Catholic school?
No, this was a public school.
Wow, that's so interesting.
I was psychoanalyzed for a number of months. I missed out on the fundamental principles of reading comprehension, and that will definitely come up later. It was made perfectly clear that I was not a witch. My teacher later retired, and that was a moment where I kind of felt like I was a little bit different. Moving forward,
Wait. So why did they think you were a witch? I need to hear this
My
because there happen to be in this world today, with those of many of us who are spiritually more aware, there are good witches too.
Yes, and you know what? This has absolutely nothing to do with anything we're going to talk about today, but I actually do believe I am a witch, which is something that has like, I never thought would come out of my mouth given my Catholic upbringing. But yeah, I do believe in that stuff, and I believe that there is real good that can come from it. And it just comes down to, who's the one spitting out information, trying to make you think something is good or something is not good. But okay, let me get back. So in the 6th grade, my best friend, she took me into the bathroom one day and she told me that everybody would like me better if I was skinny. And then she pulled out a toothbrush to teach me how to make myself throw up. And my confidence just went from like sky high to below the ground. I went from being super social to very private. I felt like, people were no longer going to accept me unless I got as small as I possibly could. And that was my mission for nearly a decade. So I used to wake up before school to work out, and my parents would compliment me on my discipline. Meanwhile, I was not eating enough food to
sustain you. Didn't they notice you weren't eating, or they did not know you were throwing it up?
Fast forward a number of years later, actually last year, I ended up confronting my parents to be like, did you guys know that I was doing this? And I assumed that their response was going to be like, I had no idea. Me being a 12-year-old, I was like, yeah, I'm super secretive. Like I can keep a secret from my parents. But I think it was actually really obvious what I was doing. And they told me last year, no, we knew the whole time, which made me really sad that like they knew and they didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, they didn't do anything to intervene. Wow. How
But then I found out years later that both of my parents are also eating disorder survivors.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sure there's some type of, guilt and shame that they deal with that I'm just never really gonna get a full story on. But it makes me feel a little bit more understanding as to maybe why they struggled with trying to intervene. But I'd wake up before school, burn 1,000 calories. I would eat popcorn at school. I would bring microwavable popcorn just to be like full during the day. And then I would come home, I would go rogue in the kitchen, and then I would throw everything up. And life was miserable. I thought in order to be liked, I had to be small. But the biggest lesson that I learned from the whole experience was that life isn't about getting other people to like you. Life is about getting you to learn to like you.
Absolutely true. The wisest words ever said. Really, it's that. In fact, when they pulled, as our audience knows, I went through this spiritual awakening. When they pulled me out of the car and the message was be loving and kind to everyone, that meant me too. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the lessons that I also learned about self-love. So you say you didn't search out the kettlebell, that it found you. So let's hear how you overcame your eating disorder and how you found the kettlebell and the kettlebell technique, which sounds like it saved you in a lot of ways.
It really did. It could have been a barbell. It could have been some other form of strength training, but I happened to walk into an interview for a kettlebell studio, and that's the modality that found me. So it's important for you to know that I struggled with the eating disorder. I struggled with body dysmorphia from 12 into my early 20s. And when I was 17, I ended up having I had 3 abdominal, I've had 4 abdominal surgeries. I had 3 of my 4 abdominal surgeries within a month and a half of each other. And I just remember coming out of the 3rd surgery thinking like, who would ever love somebody like me? I'm so disgusting. Like I had so much hate.
Self-loathing.
Myself.
Wow.
And it's just so sad because it wasn't like it all came from this one comment from this one girl that just stayed with me for such a long time. So after these
About a
surgeries,
toxic, talk about a toxic friendship.
I know.
Wow. And let
Um,
me ask you, were the abdominal surgeries due to your eating disorder?
I know everybody asks that. I feel like it would make so much more sense if they were, but no, they actually have
Okay.
nothing to do with it. I had my appendix taken out and then they removed ovarian cysts. I then had an abscess and then they ended
Wow.
up removing one of my ovaries and fallopian tubes.
Which kept saying to you, I'm imperfect, I'm imperfect, I'm imperfect.
So at this point, I've gone away to college. I went to school for musical theater, which is a whole other field where, you know, you are criticized for every little thing that you do. Nothing is objective. Everything is subjective. So, you know, am I skinny enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I singing high enough? Can I dance well enough? Everything is subjective. And I feel like there was just so much toxicity that I had to deal with from all of these subjective avenues that were really challenging. The beautiful thing about the kettlebell, it's not subjective. Either you can do the lift or you can't do the lift. You either know the technique or you don't know the technique. There's nothing subjective about it. And I think that's one of the reasons that I really gravitated to it, because it was the first time that I had something like that in my life. And it made me feel like, okay, I know if I'm doing well and I know if I'm not doing well, and I can figure out tangible steps in order to make myself do well. I loved that. So I walk into this kettlebell studio one day. At this point, I've decided, you know, I'm not going to pursue musical theater. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was like, well, you know, you're really into working out. Why don't you get a job at like a gym? You could like teach some cycling classes or something. So I go down that avenue. I get to the point where I'm teaching like 30 classes a day, and I feel like I'm going to just die. My body hurts. So then I pivot into personal training. I realize that's not something that I feel super passionate about at the time. So then I decide, okay, maybe I can just manage some trainers. And that's how I found myself at this kettlebell studio. So I go into the interview and the guy's interviewing me. And for anybody who is well versed within the hardstyle world, he has certifications in RKC levels 1 and 2, as well as strong first levels 1 and 2. So like he knows exactly, like he knows that world. He knows the right questions to ask me. And for some reason, he let me get away with coming in to manage this studio where I had absolutely no business managing. So I remember one day, one of the trainers can't teach this small group training session. So I step in to teach. And another trainer comes up to me and is like, Colleen, I know you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. So either let me help you or I'm going to tell Mike that you don't know what you're doing. And I don't know if you're going to stay here any longer. And for some reason, I let that comment really impact me as well. I don't think this trainer talking to the guy who hired me really would have gotten me, you know, fired for lying in an interview, but I decided to take him up on it. And he started training me and teaching me how to do these skills. So hardstyle kettlebell technique is a specific type of kettlebell training where we are focused on lifting relatively heavy weight very quickly and with a lot of power. So anybody can pick up a kettlebell and just start swinging it around. Anybody can pick up a kettlebell and use it like a dumbbell, but there are specific skills and specific weights based on age, your weight, and your gender that you should be able to execute these exercises at.
And what do they do for you? Like as a person, I've taken part in personal training and I've done yoga and all of that. What are the benefits to the body from this kettlebell technique?
Oh my gosh, everything. It's, you know, it's strength training. It helps with bone density. It helps with posture. It's great for cardiovascular training. It can help strengthen your core. That's the crazy thing. So after all of these abdominal surgeries that I had, I didn't have any sensation in my lower abdominals for about 8 years. Once I started training with the kettlebells, I started to get the sensation back in my lower abdominals.
Wow.
So for me, that was really, really big. but there's a lot of benefits in terms of training, strength training in general. But then with the kettlebell, there's this cardiovascular component, which is something that you don't get unless you're mixing modalities or mixing training styles.
So you're saying it strengthens your heart, helps with circulation, with blood pressure and all that other kind of thing?
Yeah. So there's a lot of benefits to training with the kettlebell, not to mention the fact that it doesn't take up a lot of space. You can do it anywhere. You can do it inside, you can do it outside. You just have to learn how to utilize that tool if you're going to go into that world. And this studio that I was at, that was the world. And it was really easy to tell if somebody knew what they were doing or if they didn't, to somebody who understands that world. I remember the first time I picked up a kettlebell, I was like, how hard can this be? And I actually have a video recording of the first time I swung a kettlebell. And looking back on it, it makes me cringe because I didn't realize how much technique went into performing it well. If you're going to go to a fine restaurant, like the way they prepare the food, everything, the temperature on the pan needs to be specific. Whatever they put in the pan, be it butter or oil or something else, it's very specific for each dish. And then the amount of time that it has to sizzle and cook is very specific. It's the same thing with the kettlebell. Like anybody can cook a meal, but to cook a meal very well, that's what it is to be able to train hardstyle with a kettlebell.
Interesting. It's fascinating. And how did this working out with the kettlebell help you to overcome some of that adversity and trauma? Did you start to feel accomplished by it? What did it do? Because you even when this guy criticized you, for once you turned around and you said, okay, this was a positive thing that happened, as opposed to what that girl said to you, which was a very negative thing that happened. So how did that help you to start to change your mindset?
Yeah. The thing with kettlebells is, and hardstyle, it looks really easy. And it's anything but easy to learn how to do these skills well. And I remember I was listening to an interview with Reese Witherspoon the other day, and she was talking about how she was casted in Walk the Line. And she was like, this is the most challenging role. I don't know why I'm doing this. I wanted to quit, and I decided not to quit. And I ended up winning I think she won an Oscar for that role. And she talks about how when we're put into a challenging situation and we want to give up and we decide not to, and we stay the course, that's what gives us confidence. And that's exactly what happened to me with the kettlebell. It was really hard. I would get videos put in my face of, okay, so we need to fix X, Y, and Z. And I decided I wasn't going to give up because I wanted to work at this place. And to me, those were the stakes. It's either you learn how to do this or you got to get out. And in staying the course and being able to achieve the skills I did at the time, it increased my confidence. And it allowed me to really start believing in myself. And it also allowed me to start being open to accepting somebody's help.
That's wonderful. What's your relationship with this fellow now? Is he still a kettlebell instructor or
Yeah.
Is that to you now with all your accomplishments?
We talk here and there. He's very much like in a slightly different world within fitness and fighting specifically. But yeah, I think we're always going to have just like a little special something.
Yeah, because he really opened you to this world that saved you.
He did. He really did. I mean, I remember at the time, the kettlebell skills I didn't really care about because I didn't really understand how challenging they were. And he was teaching me how to do these things by myself. So I didn't see if it was hard for other people or if it was just hard for me. But I remember one day he was like, Colleen, go do a pull-up. And I was like, why? He was like, just go see if you can do it now. I was like, I've never been able to do this. Are you sure? And he was like, yeah, just get up on the bar. And I was able to do a pull-up for the first time. Wow. And for me, that was something at the time where I was like, oh my gosh, once I couldn't do this and now I can. why is this? And he's like, you've been training with the kettlebells. Like, you have a lot of strength in your lats right now. You have more grip strength. Your core is stronger. Like, you should be able to do this stuff at this point. And that was just like, that was a mind-blowing moment for me. And then I ended up signing up for a progressive calisthenics certification. I remember feeling so silly when I showed up, because it was me and like, 30 to like 40 guys, and the instructors are teaching like single arm push-ups and like handstands and pistol squats and all these things where I'm just like, I can't do this. Like, why am I here? And I remember one of the guys who was leading, he was so sweet, and he was able to cue me into doing a tuck flag. So for anybody who's listening who's like, what is that? I want you to imagine somebody's hanging from a bar, just like hanging as if they were going to do a pull-up. They're hanging vertically, right? So being able to do a flag means you're hanging from a bar, but you're hanging horizontally.
Oh my gosh.
And that made me feel like I was literally made of magic. And it's been all of those little moments where I've seen, like, look at what your body can do now, that's allowed me to believe, yes, I can. And it doesn't just stop with the physical, but it's all of those physical wins that I had along the way that started to give me the confidence to believe that, yes, I can in other fields. When the pandemic hit, I was furloughed, and I decided I was going to try and create a virtual kettlebell business. And I remember I called my dad up on the phone one day, and I was like, okay, so I found this business coach, and I think I'm going to do this course, and it's $5,000. And he was like, why would you spend $5,000 on a course? Like, you're going to lose your money, and you need your money right now. And I did this course because I believed that I could.
So you did it anyway. So you listened to your voice instead of your father's.
I listened to my voice. I did everything this coach said to do, the same way I had done with my kettlebell coach. 3 months later, I made $24,000, and it was the best decision of my life, because that has been what's allowed me to help so many women since the pandemic happened with the kettlebell.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
I'm really more impressed with the fact, I mean, your kettlebell work is amazing, but your inner transformation and your more positive way you speak to yourself now.
Well, words create worlds.
Yes.
When you are talking negatively to yourself, or second guessing yourself, or just being mean, it doesn't help. Like, the words that you are using are going to impact how you see yourself, and the way you see yourself is going to be how you show up. I remember at one point somebody told me, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. And I remember like flipping that, speaking to yourself. Don't speak to yourself the way you necessarily feel right now. Speak to yourself in like that queen version that like you want to get to. And then eventually like it all starts to come together, but it starts with those words and the mindset.
Absolutely. And I would also submit that if you have blockages to those messages, like with what you did, find the modality to help you start to heal those blockages so that you can walk your talk, literally walk that talk. So now that you are filled with more self-confidence and you are beginning to believe in yourself, what kind of amazing thing is this guy to decide you're going to go for the Guinness Book of World Records? Wow, that's amazing. And what you learned about just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to. So tell us that whole incredible story from your life.
Because of the pandemic, I had so much more time where I didn't have to run around the city. I was no longer a gym gypsy. I'm creating this virtual life for myself. So I have a lot more time to take my training seriously. And I remember I was talking to my coach one day. It's a different coach at this point. I started working with a woman, because I think it's really important for women who want to feel strong to see other women who are strong. I remember actually this coach, her name is Annie. I love her so much. She means so much to me. Annie once told me, once you start watching other women do big things, you're going to be able to do big things, but you need to see that it's possible in order to believe that you can do it too. So we're training, and I was like, Annie, I need to do something big. I was not an athlete growing up. I was asthmatic and, spending time.
On top of an eating disorder, you were also asthmatic?
I still am. Yeah, when I
Oh my
moved to
God.
Arizona, my allergies were crazy here. I was put in the hospital after a week because I couldn't breathe because
In
of.
Arizona?
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting? Because a lot of times because I'm going back very far, but I have a brother who was asthmatic as a child, and we were told. I grew up in New Jersey. I was 5 or 5.5, and my parents were told if you want to save his life, because in those days with an asthmatic attack, they would send him to the hospital for an adrenaline shot to his heart. They said if you want to save this little guy, you have to go move to Arizona or Florida. And my
Wow.
family chose Florida. And here you're in Arizona and you're saying your allergies are bothering you.
They're terrible. I get there's an injection that I get every X amount of months at this point, a steroid injection, which has helped tremendously. But yeah, moving to Arizona was not good for my for my
That's interesting.
but okay, so I'm working with Annie at this point, and I'm just like, Annie, I never had that athletic moment growing up. And I finally feel like I am an athlete. I'm finding this very athletic version of myself later in life, and I want to do something about it. I want to prove to myself that I can get uncomfortable, I can push myself, I can find a limit and go past it. And I also really want to prove to the people that I coach that if I can do this, they can do this too. I want to be the example. So we decided we were going to find a record because Annie happens to have like multiple world records.
Oh.
So she was the perfect person to coach me because she knew what it was going to feel like to have to push to the point that I was going to need to push.
Now, Annie
So
was in Arizona or she was still in the New York area?
Annie was in New York still. Annie was in New York still. So everything that we've been doing was virtual. So we start training and we decide that I'm going to do Turkish get-ups because that's one of my favorite exercises. And it hasn't been done before. She was like,
what is that?
Turkish get-up is when you start lying flat on your back with a kettlebell above your head, and then you have to stand up, and then you have to lie back down. And there's 7 very specific steps that you have to do in order to stand up and then lay back down. And in the midst of that, you have to press it up with one hand, which was, without getting too ahead of myself, if my teacher didn't call me a witch, I probably would have only done my world record one time because the week before I did it the first time, I saw in the fine print that I had to press it up with one hand. Now, when you learn how to do a Turkish get-up hardstyle, you use 2 hands to bring it up and bring it down. But because I didn't read that fine print, going into my first attempt, I was not prepared. I couldn't press up that one weight with one hand. I'm literally like there. Annie flies out from New York to be in Arizona with me. And I feel like such a dummy. I'm like, Annie, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know how I misread this. And she's like, it's okay. You're gonna do the best you can. You're going to, set this. And if you want afterwards, we'll talk about figuring out a game plan for you to beat it. But right now, we're here and you're going to do the best that you can today.
What a great girl.
And that was really nice to hear. I remember at first being like, oh my gosh, like this woman flew out across the country to be with me. Like I'm going to let her down. But instead she gave me grace. And that was something that meant a lot to me in that moment. So I do my first pass. It's Annie, me, and my husband in a little room with a bunch of cameras on me because you have to film everything for Guinness or it doesn't count. We send it off. About 2 weeks later, I get it back saying you have this record. But I didn't want to tell anybody about it because it felt like it hasn't actually happened yet. Like I haven't actually done my best yet. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this again. And over how many months are in between? It's about like 5 months in between. And I start getting a feeling that there's somebody else who's going to do this. It's just a feeling. Like nobody has said anything. I do a lot of snooping on social media, but like I didn't see anybody doing any of this stuff. So I was like, I don't know where this feeling is coming from. And then A week before my second attempt, I see that there's another woman, a woman who is definitely has at least one, if not 2 decades on me, a woman who probably has close to 20, if not 30 pounds of muscle on me, who says she's going to get a Guinness World Record. And I remember feeling so upset at first. I call up Annie and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like Jackie's going to go for this. Like, why am I even doing this at this point? And Annie reminded me, like, you're doing this for you and you're doing this for your people. And, you know, you're not Jackie. And Jackie got, like, she has the athletic background that she has. You have the background that you have. And you need to do this for you. So I did it for me. And I go in, and for some reason, the kettlebell just felt so heavy that day. And Annie flew back out from New York. She brought her husband. So it's Annie, her husband, my husband, and her husband happens to be that wonderful man who is at the progressive calisthenic certification, who got me into that flag for the first time. So I have so much support, so much love right around me. And I'm getting ready to do it. And the amount of negative thoughts that were coming at me in my head that day were unlike anything else. I felt like there was something that was just trying to knock me down, which is not something that I experience a lot at this point in my life. And at the 40th minute, because we strategized for me to get like 6 1-minute breaks throughout the hour, because my record is in the most weight lifted via the Turkish get up in an hour. So I ended up doing 188 reps within an hour. So regardless of knowing anything about kettlebells, just imagine standing up and then lying down 188 times within an hour.
Wow.
So that's like three times a minute. I'm standing up, lying down, standing up, lying down, standing up, lying down. And at the 40th minute, I just start freaking out. I'm in one of my last breaks and I just start screaming out loud, yes, I can. Because as much as I wanted to hear it in my head, I couldn't hear it in my head. I needed to hear the words out loud so that they would be reinforced in my body. And that's something that I bring up to my clients a lot. Sometimes we have a lot of self-doubt. And sometimes we literally can't hear the good stuff in our head. So either you want to write it out in front of you so you can read the positivity, or you need to speak it into existence so that you can hear the positivity. And after I started yelling out loud, yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can, I finished it. I ended up getting more reps than I was expected to. And I got to finish that day, breaking my world record. And I got to hang on to it for about 2 months before Jackie came in and beat it. And I remember when Jackie beat it, I ended up getting a bunch of people reaching out to me. They said things like, oh, well, when will you get your title back? One woman reached out and was like, oh, I see Jackie beat your record and now I plan to beat Jackie's. Do you have any tips? And
wow, what a competitive world this is. Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, oh my gosh, do I need to do this a third time? Like, I don't know. It literally crossed my mind. I was like, maybe I should do this like 3rd time's a charm. And then I looked down on my forearms because my forearms took a beating that whole year. They were all bruised up just because of the pressure that the bells were hanging on me for so much time. And I looked down at my forearms and I remember thinking to myself, if I wanted to beat this, I could train and do this, but I don't want to. And that's the lesson of just because I can, it doesn't mean I have to. I didn't need to make my life about getting a title back. This whole thing was about proving to myself what I could do, finding the ceiling and then shattering it, and showing my clients that you can become the most athletic version of yourself at any age. And I did that. And I'm so proud of that. And my life doesn't have to be about
And your life didn't have to revolve around whatever these other people were doing. You did this for you, right? So so you overcame limiting beliefs in yourself, and you started to trust yourself. How does this work for women who are working with you when it comes to their work life and personal relationships? Does it transfer over to how you mindset and that you can do things like if a woman's in a troubling personal relationship, how does what you learned help her to find her fierce, so to speak, and to find a better way to handle those situations in her life?
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes right back to you learn these skills, and there's going to be a lot of times where you're like, I don't know if I want to keep moving forward. Like, this stuff is really hard. But when you choose to, and a lot of the reasons I find, the women that I work with, they stick with me because I meet them where they're at. And I know when to push and I know when to pull back. I know when to play with the masculine energy and when to play with the feminine energy. That's something that I feel is a real gift that I have and helps me to help a lot of people. And once you do that, once you see like, I can do these things with the kettlebell, it makes you believe that, well, I can do other things in life that might seem scary or a little bit too big, or scary is like the big thing that comes to mind. I had this one woman who she got started with me and her whole life just changed. She was working as a bartender. She had a new baby and she was in an abusive relationship. She started training with the kettlebells and she found the courage to leave this man and become a full-time personal trainer and create a life that she actually wanted for her and her daughter. And I think that's incredible.
That's amazing.
I've had women who are rape survivors find the kettlebell. And the cool thing about the kettlebell is you have to be really present. So like if somebody's working out on like a Peloton, and I'm not knocking Peloton, but like if I'm on a Peloton machine, I can kind of zone out. When it comes to the kettlebell, you can't zone out, because if you do, you're going to get hurt. You have to be really mindful of what it is to use the proper breathing, to create tension in the right spots in your body, to know the pathway at which you need to send the bell. And that is something that I have noticed in my female clients that helps to bring them back to themselves after feeling like their body has abandoned them.
Did you feel that this sets you apart from other kettlebell coaches because you more connect what you do to play out in other parts of their lives?
I think there's plenty of other coaches out there who happen to do the same thing. But I think it kind of just comes down to the fact that, like, everybody's a different style, everybody's a different vibe. Like, I think about New York City, right? Like, how many coffee shops are in New York City, right? There's a Dunkin' Donuts, there's a Starbucks, there's a mom and pop, there's everything, right? I think there's, plenty of incredible coaches out there. I think I have a very specific, taste, and some people love it and other people it's not for them. But these women who really want to find their fierce, they find me and I help them find it. Something that was really incredible for me, and I haven't really spoken about this too much, but something that was really incredible for me after my second world record, I found extra courage in myself. When I was in high school, the summer I graduated, I remember sneaking off to a party with a friend to meet a college guy, and I drank too much, and I woke up in his bed with my pants off the next day.
Woohoo.
And I was too scared to ask him what happened. I have absolutely no recollection of what happened. All I know is I blacked out. After my world record, like the next week, I messaged him. I hadn't talked to him in like 10 years. And I asked him what happened that night. And, he claims that he blacked out too. And, he doesn't exactly remember. And I don't know that I necessarily need to know what happened that night, but the fact that I felt strong enough to ask, that felt like a growth moment for me. And that's something that I think these women find. you can do scary things, and you can be okay. And anything in life, I think there's always going to be some element of fear, and that's what holds a lot of people back. But when you realize that the only thing to fear is fear itself, you're more willing to take it on.
It sounds like by finding your fears, you found your voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that you help other women to find their voices through this. So I want to ask you also, I know you wrote your book, Kettlebell Catalyst, which is the exercise guide for women to build strength, lean muscle, and self-confidence. And you also talk about the connection between the chakras and the kettlebells.
Yes.
So tell us all about your book and tell us about that connection, because many of the people listening to this podcast are spiritual and they understand about the energy centers with the chakras.
Yes, I love that. Okay. So the book in and of itself is, it's a great tool for anybody who's interested in learning what is hardstyle kettlebell technique. There's a bunch of tutorials. I break down the big 6 exercises that are our staples within this type of training. But throughout the entirety of the book are the stories of the women that I've had the privilege of coaching. And you literally get firsthand, stories from them as to what life looked like before the kettlebell and what it has looked like up until the book got published.
It's so inspiring.
It's very inspiring. I mean, I think something that I can't say all women, but I would feel pretty confident saying like 85% of women have probably been in like a group fitness class before. And it's all of those women who have, found the dark side of hardstyle kettlebell technique, and it's impacted them in such a positive way. So you get the tutorials from me in the book. You learn all about, the 101 breakdown of hardstyle. You get to hear these stories. One of my clients who has turned into a dear friend is a psychologist, and she does a whole chapter on how kettlebells can help you overcome trauma. And a lot of the women are really open in the book, talking moments that have been extremely traumatic, be it due to sexual or other physical acts. And then there's
is there sort of a generic reason or way that you can encapsulate how the kettlebell helps a person overcome trauma?
It's the awareness. It's the awareness of learning how to be present in your body, especially after, if you were somebody who has experienced the feeling of disassociating from your body. So it's the awareness that's like the big component there. Because again, if you're not aware and you're not present in your body, you can get hurt, and the kettlebell is not forgiving.
And so how does it relate to the chakras?
So we know that we have all of these chakras in our bodies, right? Either 7 or 9, or some people believe that there's many. So these chakras are energy spindles, right? And I believe that, for some people, given whatever experiences they have gone through in life, some of the chakras, they will shut off, right? So the cool thing about kettlebells, it's repetition. And something I have noticed is specifically in the sacral chakra, when we're doing an exercise like a swing or a deadlift or a snatch or a clean, where it looks like thrusting, you are just like thrusting your hips. It's helping to reignite that energetic spindle. There's another female coach. There's another female coach and there's a male coach who have told me that they've had these experiences where they'll have a client just, swing the kettlebell, and then they'll break down and cry because they're feeling this energetic shift in their body. And then they open up saying that, I'm a survivor, sorry, not a victim. I'm a survivor of a sexual assault that happened X amount of years ago. And that's something that I think is really special and unique to this type of training that not a lot of people have been able to figure out just yet. But it's something that I want to bring more awareness to. When we're lighting up these different energies throughout our body with the kettlebell, it's not just getting us, stronger and in more shape. It's helping us to reconnect to ourselves And I think the more somebody can learn how to connect to themselves, the more healing they can bring.
Absolutely. And it helps to release the trauma. It
Mhm.
helps to release those sparks. What is the age range of women who you're training in general?
In general, I have like mid 20-year-olds up into their late 60s.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You're even getting us baby boomers.
Yeah.
Right? If someone wants to find out more about your kettlebell coaching, where do they go? Should they just, I mean, I know they can buy your book, and you probably have an online presence, right?
I do. Probably the best place to reach out to me is going to be on Instagram. My handle is I am Colleen Conlon. You can also reach out to me if you go to my website, which is www.colleenconlon.com.
Okay. And when it comes to healing, Colleen, you say there's a time to be strong and a time to give yourself grace.
Mm.
Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. I think, because I'm on your podcast right now, and because this is more of a spiritual place, I kind of associate the strength and the grace with the masculine and the feminine energy. And there is a time to be, more logical and more critical and more specific, keep your head down, like get the work done. But then there's also a time to flow and be creative and just feel the things that you're feeling. And that's something that I think, everybody should know is good for them. I think in society, especially here in the US, we think like I got to work, 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 work. There's no time to feel, there's no time to play. And we need that. We need strength and grace. We need masculine energy and feminine energy in order to find some semblance of balance.
It sounds like you're saying you need to make time to nurture yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? Right. That's beautiful. And what is the Colleen tip for finding joy in life?
Have a dance party.
Oh, that's so fabulous.
Have a dance party. Have your dance party be so outlandish that it makes you blush.
That sounds like great fun. Any particular kind of dancing or whatever?
Whatever feels good. Whatever feels good.
By yourself or with a whole bunch of people?
I mean, I think it can be really fun to do with a whole bunch of people. But if you're somebody who doesn't have that group with you all the time, just let it go wild in your office, like I will probably do after this call. That's all you need.
There you go. Thank you. That's great. Colleen, I want to thank you for you're an amazingly positive role model for grief to healing and rebirth, and for creating a space in the world to build women up and believe they are limitless, and for helping women find their fierce in order to empower them to change the narrative in their lives. That is so important. And I want to thank you from my heart for this really inspiring and literally moving interview today on Grief and Rebirth podcast. And here's a loving reminder, everyone, you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And from my heart, I really want to thank you, Colleen, as I like to say, to be continued. Many blessings. And bye for now.